All right. Let's get the music off. Um, this one's gonna be an interesting one. I don't not that I haven't wanted to. I just haven't yet done any really political stuff on my channel, but for those that actually read the for those that actually read the the description that I have it on my channel for what I do, I talk about how I am an orthodox Marxist, and I do like to and would want to start actually providing a Marxian perspective on socio-political issues and on broader neoclassical political economy. And so that's what this video is. And we are going to be reviewing a video put out by PragerU. I don't remember how long ago. But this is a series of videos that they've done on understanding Marxism. So let's dive right into this and judge whether or not PragerU actually understands Marxism. I'm very curious to find out whether they do or not. So let's get started.
Why does anyone still care about Marxism? Karl Marx has been dead for well over a century.
Why does anybody still do calculus? Isaac Newton's been dead for over 400 or close to 400 years.
Everywhere Marxism has been tried, it has left death and destruction in its wake.
Well, we're already off. Damn. Come, hey, dude. Okay. I don't know how I didn't realize this before. Well, first off, there's a thing I need to do, and that's that. But what's this dude doing with his hair, bro? What is this? Like, what's going on? And I know there's gonna be people. Oh, you don't have an argument, so you have to make fun of his hair. Oh no, I have an argument. I'm gonna give the argument, but look, this is the internet. How are you gonna make a video and this is your hairstyle? Anyway, so I would be very curious to know what countries have actually tried Marxism and in virtue of what they tried it. And that's going to be a very interesting question for one to answer, because what Marxism is going to depend on the person you're talking to. If you're talking to a Leninist or a Maoist, they're going to think that it's something a little bit different than if you were talking to someone like me, an orthodox Marxist. By the way, I'm not a fan of, an advocate for things like Leninism, Trotskyism, Stalinism, Maoism, or other forms of anarcho-communism. That's not what I do. That's not it. Yeah, but anyway, it's left death and destruction. I would just need like direct examples of that and how those examples tie back into Marxism specifically.
In fact, nothing in the last 1,000 years comes close to the amount of tyranny, terror, and mass murder brought about by Marxist regimes.
Yeah, but what about like Nazi Germany and all of the other extraordinarily tyrannical leaders that existed before Marxism ever did? Like these are just claims. We're not getting any evidence. He's just claiming Marxism is evil and disgusting because some people who kind of liked it decided that they wanted to do evil and disgusting things. So now that means all of Marxism must be intrinsically evil and disgusting. Like I don't even know what the fuck. I don't even know how to respond to this, because there isn't a substantive point being made here. I don't know what this is. This is kind of funny.
Yet Marxism lives. It may present itself today as postmodernism, multiculturalism, feminism, environmentalism, or critical race theory.
Okay, with perhaps the exception of critical race theory, which is rooted in a Marxian socioeconomic or broader socio-political analysis, postmodernism, multiculturalism, feminism, environmentalism have abso-fucking-lutely nothing to do with Marxism. These are words you will not find in any work that Marx or Engels wrote. At least as far as I actually haven't read all of it. What am I saying? I've read all theory. What are we talking about? Anyway, these are like what? I don't know what this means. I'm just confused. I really hope the whole video isn't like this. I was actually looking for something substantive to be able to respond to.
But it's still Marxism. So there must be good reasons why it has endured, even flourished in the face of unremitting failure.
Yeah, but when has Marxism failed though? Like, that's what I'm not like. There's been people who like kind of agreed with some things that Marx said and wrote down, and then they did things in the world that weren't in alignment with what Marx wrote down or said. So like I'm just not understanding. Well, I mean, they're not understanding Marxism already, and we're not even a fucking minute into this. But I'm just gonna have to continue because I'm baffled right now.
Say what you will about Marx the economist. He was a master psychologist.
He wasn't actually really an economist, and he wasn't a psychologist either. He was a philosopher and a sociologist. They don't even know. I bet this guy that's narrating this couldn't tell me what Marx's PhD was in, which was sociology, by the way. Well, it was a sociological field. And that's because most people don't know that Karl Marx actually had a PhD. That he was a professional philosopher and sociologist. He's considered one of the founders, if not the founder, of modern sociology. Like there are numerous people all across economics and sociology that do disagree with a lot of what Marx said, but nobody is going to deny the importance that he has had with respect to these fields and the development that he's contributed to. Even today, there are in certain senses, Marxian concepts born into our modern societies. Like these people, I guarantee you, if I asked this guy, can you like give me one of the main ideas that Marx laid out? He wouldn't be able to do it. See, this is the problem with too many people that criticize Marxism is they don't actually fucking know anything about it. It's insane to me.
He recognized that there are many people in every society who are motivated by envy and resentment.
No, Marx, that isn't a thing that. What? This is gonna be a fun 17 minutes. PragerU, you don't fail to make a guy feel good. Okay, you just don't fail.
Marx speaks directly
I mean, with respect to understanding Marxism, you do fail miserably. But yeah, that's yeah.
to them. He tells them that the responsibility for the misery in their lives belongs to the capitalist system. If we can just get rid of that,
Well, yeah, that was like a large part of what he criticized, but Marx was actually ultimately criticizing what would have been at the time, classical political economy. And even more than that, he was criticizing the notion of hierarchical systems and that they are intrinsically autocratic, and that thereby any hierarchical system that which is utilized as a broad system under which society is managed is intrinsically going to be autocratic, and thereby is intrinsically going to be rooted in a system that is opposed to the democracy and the liberty of all peoples, and that thereby all those kinds of systems should be abolished where they are found and where they can be, because that's what we can that's going to be the best way to maximize the true freedom and the true liberty that individuals have. And what Marx recognized is that the capitalist mode of production is such a system, and thereby it should be transcended with a system that furthers concepts of liberty and democracy.
promises we can eliminate poverty, inequality, exploitation, class conflict, war, and alienation.
With the exception of class conflict, Marx said pretty much none of that. That is, I again, I haven't actually read all theory. I've read quite a bit of it, a lot of the prominent works put out by Marx and Engels, but I have not seen that anywhere. In fact, the thing is, Marx was quite critical of things like utopianism and egalitarianism because he thought that they were bourgeois. Well, maybe not utopianism so much as like egalitarianism and stuff like that. He thought were more bourgeois concepts utilized to pacify the masses into accepting the system as it currently stands.
Not a bad list if you're looking to start a revolution. But there's more.
Marx wasn't trying to start a revolution, but hopefully we'll be able to get into that later.
Marxism assures us that this socialist utopia is
Marx was very critical of utopian socialism. In fact, the word utopia I don't think it was initially coined by Marx, but it was utilized by Marx and subsequently Engels, his closest colleague, Friedrich Engels, as a pejorative term against the earliest socialists. That word did exist, but it wasn't quite as prominent. The early socialists that were born of the French Revolution. They were referred to as utopian socialists. They believed that socialism was this idea that we could realize if we all just kind of held hands and sung kumbaya and worked really hard to get there. And Marx said that that's just entirely the wrong way to look at it. See, this was where Marx broke with Hegel. I would wonder if this guy knew anything about the fact that Marxism is fundamentally rooted in aspects of Hegelianism. He probably didn't. Is that Hegel was an idealist. And Marx didn't really like that because he didn't think that it was ideas that drove the world forward. So Marx was very critical of utopian socialism. And this is brought to fruition in the book written by Friedrich Engels entitled Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, where Engels juxtaposes utopian socialism and scientific socialism and offers criticisms and then offers some comparisons. But the criticisms are far and away what you found in that book, because Marx and Engels were highly critical of utopian socialism because they believed it to be too idealistic and naive. So that when people talk about Marxism as this socialist utopia, this immediately tells you they haven't read a fucking word of Marx.
Close at hand, available to all, not in some distant future or in the next life, but here and now. All we have to do is overcome one little obstacle: human nature.
No, that's, oh my God, this is so bad. So the thing is, Marx actually believed that human nature was something that was more cooperative and collective and communal than what we've been living under for the last roughly 6,000 to 8,000 years. He believed that the class society and the establishment of a class society where there are distinct classes of people with different levels of material conditions, or, you know, your wealth and the resources that you have access to and what have you. And thereby, as a result of those differences in material conditions, those different classes of people had different interests. And you had a class that owned and controlled all of the resources and the political systems, largely through economic wealth and power. And then you had those that labored under those who owned. You had an ownership class and a laborer class. In the words of Marxian socio-political analysis, you would have the bourgeois and the proletariat. But I don't really like to use those terms because they're not. I don't even think they were developed by Marx. He just used them. But So Marx thought that a class society, which was antithetical to human nature, was developed so that a set of small people could maintain an autocratic control over society and develop massive amounts of wealth and thereby power off of the labor of people who contributed their labor power to those owners via working for them. It's just that back then people weren't really paid a wage to do that. So Marx would not have at all agreed that this was like intrinsic in human nature, at least not in the sense as it's being portrayed here.
Marx expressed his deepest views on this subject in his economic and philosophical manuscripts of 1844. They can be summed up in one phrase: the enemy of being is having.
No, oh my God. This is one of the most simplistic. This video in the first minute 45 fucking seconds that we've been watching it is everything I would expect from a 7th grader who grew up in a Trumpist household, who started reading Marx as a means of trying to understand it, to criticize it, and read like just the Communist Manifesto, and now thinks they're an expert on Marx and can criticize them. This is so bad. This is so bad.
In other words, the desire to own things makes you a bad person.
No, everybody has the desire to own things. What Marx would have said is that there are people, he would have almost asked the question: should there be people who are allowed to own vastly more than what they could ever need in their lifetime? And I think that most people ultimately would answer no to that question. Now, you're going to get those trolls and those idiots that are like, yeah, I think that's okay. I don't even think it's worth a discussion with these people. But none of this is found in any of Marx's writings. Like this, I don't.
However, you're not to blame. The blame belongs to capitalism. The most common interpretation.
Well, there is some truth in that. The blame does fall largely on the shoulders of capitalism, but
of Marx's philosophy suggests that he opposed capitalism because it creates an unjust world of inequality exploitation, and class conflict.
Well, more that he believed it was a way of facilitating those things. Capitalism was a mode of production through which the ownership class, which has existed for the last 6 to 8,000 years, it really just depends on kind of how you're looking at history there. There's some nuance. That capitalism was just another mode through which this ownership class could maintain their ownership and thereby their wealth and their power and their control over society. It wasn't that those are rooted in capitalism, it's that capitalism was a medium for their perpetuation. This is what Marx would have said. This is a dog shit criticism of Marxism. Like there are meaningful criticisms of Marxism out there. This is not one of them, but not even close.
Marxism, according to this view, is all about equalizing income and social status.
No.
This is true, but it doesn't go.
Marx would have said that income was likely going to be more a result of your social status.
Far enough. Marx saw the accumulation of material wealth as dehumanizing. The more money and material possessions one acquires, the more estranged one is from his true humanity.
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. I don't. I have no idea what this even means. No clue.
And what was that? In the philosopher's socialist paradise, one gets to eat, drink, and go to the theater free of charge and without having to earn a living.
What? 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 You can do things, but you don't have to earn a living. What? Well, first off, the phrase "earn a living" is, I think, honestly, I'm just going to be straight up with you guys. I think it's kind of vague. What does that mean? What does it mean to earn a living? Let's break that open. And I'm not saying that it can't be defined. I'm just saying I think it's generally vague. So I this just, I'm laughing because I don't know. I genuinely, I don't know where to start with criticizing. I could literally probably spend 5 hours reviewing this video. Like this is ignoring everything that Marx said about what labor is and how the productive forces of society fundamentally and the value of the things that societies produce is fundamentally rooted in labor. That that labor is an intrinsic part of human society. Labor is how society relates to the natural world, because it is through labor that we turn natural resources into utilitous, usable goods. Labor is the medium that relates mankind to reality. What Marx said was, who owns all of the systems under which humans labor? And is this a just system? This, you don't have to earn a living and everything is free, is such a bad caricature. That's all it is. It is a meaningless caricature of Marx made by people who don't know anything about the theory.
Best of all, you get to do it without the guilt of being a moocher. All you have to do is enjoy yourself.
What?
Or, as Marx put it, you can do one thing today and another tomorrow. Hunt
Yeah, do you know?
in the morning,
let him finish.
fish in the afternoon, and rear cattle in the evening. Yes, rear cattle in the evening.
Yeah, but do you know what Marx was saying here? What Marx was getting at with this point is that what he wanted was, and what he felt is eventually is just inevitably going to come as a result of the revolutionary development of human societies, is that he wanted a society where people had the freedom to be able to choose what it is they want to do. And now a lot of people are going to say, well, we already have that. You can go into, you can go wherever you want. You can work for whoever you want, but you really can't, though. You actually can't. You don't actually get to choose where you work because you don't make the decision as to whether or not you're hired. You rarely have much say over what you're paid. You rarely have much say over what actual job duties you're going to be doing. I know many people, myself is one of them, that have been told we are going to be doing, what the fuck is that? who have been told we're going to be doing certain things at a job, and then that's not what we did. So what Marx was talking about is that if the means of production, the mode of production more appropriately, is not privately owned but collectively owned and democratically controlled, this would say, or what this would bring about is a society in where the individual has much more freedom over what they actually get to do in terms of their productive labor, rather than having to go and work for someone else doing whatever they say for as long as they say and for as much as they choose to pay you. You would have more freedom to actually pursue what it is you truly want to do. And I just think that's the point that's being missed here. Because it's a point I don't think this guy understands. I don't know. Does it say what his name is? Um, C. Bradley Thompson. All right.
That's how in touch Marx was with reality. But who cleans out the sewers, does the dirty jobs that keep a society functioning?
Laborers do. Do they have much control over their labor?
Ironically, in the evil capitalist society, the sewer cleaner freely chooses to take on his job. In the
But does he though? I mean, this completely misses the criticism that Marx was laying out. Sure, you might in some sense be free to choose where it is you would like to work and sort of petition to work there. But ultimately, no matter where you work, you're going to be subject to the whims of somebody higher than you. Your labor is, or rather, your labor power is being purchased by someone else, and they are intrinsically going to be paying you less over some given period of labor time than what you are producing in terms of value over that same period of labor time. So you can, in maybe some flowery sense, choose where you want to work, but you're still under a capitalist mode of production. And that's the criticism here.
socialist paradise, coercion is almost always required. Marx never bothered with such messy details. He left that to others.
There is a comment here that I would like to highlight. But Marx doesn't understand that all economic activity is a form of labor, and intellectual labor is rarer and thus more valuable. Actually, that's exactly what Marx said. All economic activity, even aspects of a service economy, which Marx believed it did not contribute value to the products that they were servicing, is fundamentally rooted in productive labor. That value in an economy is rooted in specifically productive labor. So yes, Marx well, number one, I don't think that it would be true that all activity is a form of labor. Well, it depends on what you mean by labor. But yeah, that is something that Marx said, certainly. But also, value to a Marxist and for Marx was not rooted in rarity. So it wouldn't matter if something is rarer to a Marxist. That wouldn't necessitate that it is more valuable, because value was not rooted in rarity to at least to Marx, and for somebody like me who is also a Marxist.
Unfortunately, those others always turn out to be megalomaniacs, like Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Castro, Pol Pot, and Hugo Chavez. They were the ones who brought...
Yeah, whether or not these people really embodied or captured the ideals of Marxism is up for debate. I don't think I'm an orthodox Marxist, so this revolutionary vanguardism, like some of these names are on this list, Trotskyism, Leninism, Stalinism, Maoism, things like of the anarcho-communism of, say, Fidel Castro or Ho Chi Minh. These, I don't agree with these. I'm an orthodox Marxist. These are not ideals. I might find some merit in some of these ideals, but I would consider them more to be bastardizations of what Marx was really laying out by men who sought to take his ideals and turn it into the sort of their own ideal, just simply based on Marxism. But that's just my opinion on the matter.
Marx to life, and in the process caused tens of millions to suffer and die.
The problem with this objection, this idea, yes, that's exactly correct. To a Marxist and for Marx, the value of some good was a direct result or was a function of the amount of socially necessary labor requisite to its production, and that what this helped to explain were long run equilibrium prices in an economy. I'm just glad to see we actually have somebody, you know, that there's people read on Marxism, whether or not they agree or disagree. There are people that are, you know, reasonably read on Marxism in the chat, because PragerU is obviously failing in this respect. But back to what I wanted to say, this objection that, well, you have all the like Lenin and Stalin and Mao, they killed so many people, tens of millions of people died under their regimes. Yeah, you're right. The thing here is, and the reason why this isn't a good objection, is because Marx and subsequently Engels never prescribed a uh, a praxis for how to implement socialism or communism in a nation. And the reason for that was because Marx didn't think that people, well, not, at least not in the direct sense. Marx didn't think that you could just do things and make socialism come to fruition. That socialism and subsequently communism were inevitable results of the revolutionary development of human society as a result of class antagonism, and that socialism and subsequently communism would spell the disintegration of a class society, and would thereby probably result in less revolutions, potentially the elimination of revolutions as a necessary, or not really necessary, but intrinsic feature of the development of human societies. These men chose to take Marxism and implement it in this way, but that doesn't mean that Marx thought that was a good way to implement it. This is these men's opinions on how to implement, I got to wipe off my screen here, to implement some of these Marxian ideals. But Marx never prescribed a praxis for how to implement them. So what these men did can't really be said to be in alignment with Marxism, because Marxism doesn't really, at least, you know, your classical and your orthodox Marxism don't prescribe a praxis. So somebody might believe in Marxism, but has an absolutely horrid praxis for bringing it to fruition in the world. I think that's totally a thing that can happen, but I don't think that bears on the merits of Marxism itself. Um, and right here, what I wanted to say to this is that if there's necessary labor in its production, then it has value, because that's what value means to a Marxist. It makes no sense to say that there is socially necessary labor requisite to the production of a good, but that good doesn't have any value, because value is the socially necessary labor requisite to the production of a good or a service, at least to a Marxist. So you would just be using, Snake, value to mean something different than a Marxist does here.
Contrary to Marx's claims, work freely chosen brings both money and dignity. Furthermore, most people work best when they pursue their own self-interest.
Yeah, but can you really do that under capitalism? I mean, the person who has a kid and has to get a job, but what they'd like to do is paint. Well, obviously they can't spend all day painting and make money. We all know that's not going to work. In fact, that's often brought up as something that is a reason why you shouldn't go like to art school and stuff, because, well, you're not going to make any money. The idea that we live in an economy where people are freely capable of choosing their pursuits, no, they're not, because there's a vast array of people. I don't want to say majority, but a vast array of people who do have certain things they'd like to pursue, but don't, because it wouldn't bring any immediate money such that they can use that money to purchase the things they need to continue to subsist on the planet. So, I mean, this is just false.
An idea Marx despised. To him, self-interest turns everyone into Ebenezer Scrooge, greedy, grasping, and unfeeling. Not only is money, that is capital, inherently corrupting, but the acquisition of
Yeah, Marx didn't say that money was inherently corrupting. That's not a thing that I, at least I recall. And you got to remember, guys, I am working from my understanding of Marxism. I'm not going to say I've read everything, because I haven't, but I think I've read enough to really understand a lot of what Marx and Engels were laying out. And the works that I use are what Marx and Engels wrote. The only other work that I would consider potentially meaningful are, you know, The State and Revolution by Lenin. There's a couple of things I think Trotsky wrote that are pretty based, but largely I work from Marx and Engels, which is why I'm an orthodox Marxist. And with respect to what I've read, that what he just said is not anywhere in that.
it can't be done honestly or fairly. The rich got rich by exploiting the worker. For Marx, there's no other possible explanation. For many today,
Well, okay, hold on here.
the acquisition of it can't be done honestly or fairly. The rich got rich by exploiting the worker. For Marx, there's no other possible explanation.
That's not entirely true. So Marx didn't say, "Oh, it has to be exploitation. There's no other possible answer." What Marx said is that the reason that profit exists in the capitalist system is in under the capitalist mode of production is ultimately a result of the extraction of surplus value. Oh no, I said that term you're not supposed to say. Everybody take a drink. The extraction of the surplus value that is so what the surplus excess, they mean the same thing. Surplus was the word Marx used. So you have what the worker is paid in, say, an hour of work. He gets paid, let's just say, gets paid 20 bucks an hour. But in that same hour of work, the productive labor that he contributes or labor power that he contributes generates $80 in value for the company. That means there's a $60 gap or excess between what he's paid and what he produces. He's producing more in terms of value than what he's receiving as a wage. The difference between that is the surplus or the excess value, and it is the extraction of that excess or surplus value that is the profit for the capitalist. So even if the worker was being paid a good wage, you could be making $1 million a year. But if you're generating for your boss $10 million in value, and he's extracting his wage or his wage is paid via the extraction of that excess value that you produce compared to what you're paid, you're still being exploited. Somebody could have a very good living and still get exploited. Exploitation does not mean you're poor or you're not well off. It means you're being taken advantage of. And that's what Marx, under his analysis, obviously, that's what he said about the capitalist mode of production is that it's exploitative because the income that the capitalist receives was not generated via the contribution of labor power. It was via the extraction of excess or surplus value as a result of the difference between the labor power contributed by the laborers he hires um, and the value that they actually produce. And I would say that if, and I want to emphasize that word there, if you agree with a Marxian analysis, then I think you would be committed to agreeing that under a capitalist mode of production, profit is intrinsically exploitative.
For many today, there is no other possible explanation. For these people, Marx offers a philosophical justification for their anger, even their rage. From generation to generation, the formula never varies. Only by bringing the privilege down can the
No, okay.
underprivileged be brought up.
So there is a sense in which this is true. In order to lift other people up, those who have hoarded so much, and it's the fact that they're hoarding so much that's resulted in other people having so little, then obviously that they're. Then the thing is, their status, like if Jeff Bezos had 99% of his wealth just eliminated, his standard of living will not change. It would not change. He would still be worth billions of dollars. So the standard of living doesn't need to change. What needs to change is the mode of production under which humans live. It needs to be less extractive and less exploitative. So the idea that we got to bring other people down to lift other people up, no, actually we don't. At least not in the sense that that Prager is trying to paint right here. Yeah, I don't know what I would need to understand what you mean when you say that the LTV is incomplete. I mean, it does significantly more than just describe how much labor is required to produce. The LTV is quite a complex um, uh, critique of political economy under a capitalist mode of production. The LTV doesn't aspire to ascribe or describe subjective value, because under the LTV, value isn't subjective. So what you're doing here, Snake, is you're working from your own idea of value and then imposing that notion of value on the LTV, which has a different notion of value. You can't do that. When you're doing that, you're just not addressing what the labor theory of value says. So if you take value to mean what it means under the LTV, then you would be committed to saying that profit is exploitative in specifically a capitalist mode of production.
The venom that pours out of Marx's pen stems ultimately from the fact that reality wouldn't conform to his worldview.
What? Oh my God, I don't even know what that means. What? This is how you know that they don't. I need to turn the AC back on instead of just the fan. I'm getting a little hot. This is how you know they don't know what Marxism is. They think that Marx is describing the way he thinks the world should work. It's not really what Marx was doing. Marx was not prescribing a praxis or anything like that. What Marxism is broadly a criticism of, well, in his time, classical, but in the more contemporary age, neoclassical political economy. Marxism, with what, when you look at Marxism, the more fundamental aspects of it don't even have anything to do with economics. It's metaphysics, it's philosophy. Dialectical materialism is a metaphysic. It's not an economic at all. Like, this is why you shouldn't critique Marxism if you don't know anything about it. I haven't heard this guy mention dialectical materialism or historical materialism or Hegelianism or anything that Marxism is based on thus far in this video. We're not even 5 minutes in. Wow, this is bad.
It never seems to have occurred to him that people are complex beings with different talents, ambitions, and desires. It may be more accurate to say he didn't care. If people wouldn't conform to his world.
The labor theory of value includes variables for supply and demand. In fact, under the labor theory of value, the fluctuation of an exchange price, well, at least according to an LTV theorist, about the long run equilibrium price is directly a result of supply demand curves. I mean, you would need supply demand curves to largely determine an equilibrium price. Supply and demand are certainly a part of LTV.
View voluntarily, then the state would just have to use other methods of persuasion, like morally, to say he talents, ambitions, and desires. Reality wouldn't conform to his worldview. It never seems to have occurred to him that people are complex beings with different talents, ambitions, and desires.
Oh my God, tell me you've never read Marx without telling me you've never read Marx. Oh my God, he literally said that. Like, that's actually a thing he said. This shit just cracks me up. I know it sounds like I'm getting a little excited. I'm just blown away. I'm just baffled at how somebody can be criticizing Marx here, but not understand it. Oh my God. And that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people realize that Marxism is a lot more philosophical than people think. It's rooted in philosophy and metaphysics, and then it moves into like a historical analysis, which then prescribes a critique of political economics, at least classical or neoclassical political economics.
Desires. It may be more accurate to say he didn't care. If people wouldn't conform to his worldview voluntarily, then the state would just have to use other methods of persuasion,
Why does the state matter here? Marx was critical of nation states, believing them to be a tool utilized by the capitalist class to maintain their wealth, their power, and their control. Marx was critical of nation states. Marx was critical of centralized governments. The idea that what Marxism is, oh, it's the state, the state, the government owns all that. No, absolutely not even remotely close. That's what?
Like murder and terror. It all made sense to the philosopher as he toiled away in a corner of the British Museum or in his squalid London apartment.
It's interesting. Like Marx did struggle with poverty, which makes sense considering the things that he wrote down, but I'm not it seems like they're pointing this out to like say that it's a bad thing. Well, he was poor. He had to go to the library and lived in squalor. Yeah, that doesn't bear on the merits of what he's saying. So I'm not understanding that I'm not anyway.
What is astonishing is that millions came to believe him. What is tragic is that millions more suffered and died because they did.
Well, I don't think it's the first one I agree with, but I just don't think that's tragic. The second one is not true.
What is scary is that millions continue to believe.
Well, I don't see why that's scary at all. I mean, your hair is what's kind of scary at your age. Just saying, guy.
I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University for Prager University.
We're just now getting to the introduction and the meat of the video. We've been going for 45 minutes. Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
In a remarkably short period of time, the philosophy of Karl Marx changed the course of history.
That is
At the
true.
height of its power, half the world fell under its dominion, kept there by a
I don't think so personally. I'm sorry.
combination of fear, terror, and brute force.
No.
Then suddenly, in the late 1980s, it imploded. By all rights,
What?
this should have been the end of Marxism. But it hasn't turned out that way. From environmentalism with its rejection of free markets to critical race theory.
What? Environmentalism doesn't have to reject free. What are you even saying, dude?
Which sees white patriarchy as the source of all evil.
No, that's not what critical race theory is. Oh my God. I'm not even going to try to mention. I'm just going to keep going.
You'll find Marxism at its root. The leaders of Black Lives Matter, for example, openly acknowledge their devotion to Marxist ideology. How do we explain this fascination for something that has so utterly failed everywhere it's been put into practice?
Hasn't failed.
We can find answers in one of Marx's most enduring...
See, I would just like to ask the guy, in virtue of what has Marxism failed? And then he would point not to Marxism, but to random individuals' particular beliefs about how to implement it, which doesn't necessarily bear on the merits of Marxism itself. But he wouldn't be able to tell me like what actually where Marxism has failed, or with respect to what Marxism has failed.
epigrams. From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Marx was a poor economist.
I wonder if he knows what that means.
But a talented journalist.
Well, he wasn't really an economist. He also wasn't a journalist. He was a philosopher and a sociologist for like the third time. Oh my God, we're just gonna keep mischaracterizing who he even was as a person. Like these are, they're slight ad hominems, is what they are ultimately.
The only actual job you understand not only that people are complex beings with Marxist ideology everywhere during according. The only actual job he ever had. He knew how to turn a phrase. But what does this slogan even mean?
Yeah, these are just more, they're subtle ad hominems. They're just kind of making really subtle attacks to Marx's character, but they're not criticizing any of his ideas. And then they're claiming that as a result of these subtle attacks on his character, his ideas don't need to be believed. It's literally the definition of an ad hominem. Attacking the character of the person presenting an argument as cause or as reason for rejecting their argument, but you're not actually addressing the argument. Oh, God damn it, Jay. Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh. Look at the top of his head. Okay, I'll stop.
Mean? According to what ability? According to what need? And who determines anyone's ability or anyone's need? Marx never bothered to answer these obvious questions.
Whoa,
He had
whoa,
much
whoa,
bigger
whoa.
need.
Let me hear
What
that
a
again.
new economist, but a talented journalist. The only actual mean. According to what ability? Turn a phrase. But what does this slogan even mean? According to what ability? According to what?
Yeah, so what the slogan from each according to his ability and to each according to his needs is saying is that we should only demand from somebody what they are capable of doing. We shouldn't ask of somebody more than what they are capable of. Likewise, nobody should ask from somebody else more than what that person is capable of. You should only be receiving what it is that you need and no more. And you should only be giving what it is that is required and no more. But why overwork if we need to overwork? Why overproduce if we need to overproduce? Why over receive if we don't need to over receive? So the fact that he doesn't understand what that phrase means tells you everything. Either A, he doesn't understand a single thing about Marxism, or B, maybe he does, but he's just lying because he's on PragerU and that's like all they ever do.
Need. And who determines anyone's ability or anyone's need? Marx never bothered to answer these obvious questions.
Yeah, he did. What determines need are the material conditions in which one lives, and what determines ability are, well, the abilities that a person has. What? Oh man.
He had much bigger things on his mind. Nothing less than the creation of an entirely new kind of world for an entirely new kind of human being.
Yes, he believed that the current systems were not sufficient for producing and providing for the sustainability, the efficiency, and the continued substantive, if I could English properly, existence of humans on the planet. That the systems that we live under are strangling the development of our productive forces and thereby the development of our societies rather than actively promoting it. And then he went on to explain why he believed that through all of the critiques that he provided and all of the works that this idiot obviously hasn't fucking read or has and is just lying about it because, hey, it's PragerU.
Marx believed that by altering man's economic and political institutions, he could alter, or even better, rewire the human brain.
What? What? What?
Could conjure a new consciousness that would replace the old false one.
What? Like they're literally saying that Marx just thought he could brainwash, but like this is such bad delivery. Such bad delivery.
This new man would be less selfish and acquisitive and more altruistic and communal. In short, he would be a superior type of man. Of course, this new man could only reach this goal if he wasn't preoccupied with having to earn money. According to Marx, money and the pursuit of it.
Well, no, what Marx said is that people would be capable of actually pursuing the desires and the goals that they truly have if they weren't busy with trying to earn money so that they could meet their bare subsistence needs, which is the case under capitalism, which is why the vast majority of people have to wake up at 5, 6, 7 in the morning to go to work until 3, 4, 5 in the afternoon, 4 or 5, if not more days a week. While the person that owns the company that they're working at almost certainly has to do none of that and earns significantly more than the people who do, which is a result of the people who do. Which is funny because they were criticizing earlier, like, what did Marx mean when he said that people could like pursue all this stuff? Well, that's what he meant. That if people weren't concerned with meeting their bare material needs, they would be more capable of pursuing other things, which is why historically it was the wealthy and the well-off that were capable of doing all of the art and all of the intellectualism and the intellectual development and the artistic development is because they didn't need to spend all of their time trying to find food and water and feed themselves and all that stuff. They could pursue those things because their material conditions were different. And thus their interests, their material interests were different.
Ruined everything. Marx hated money. Maybe because he...
Well, no. No, he didn't hate money. He just thought money was a device utilized to implement control over society. My God.
never found a way to make it. getting rid of it
More ad homs. Well, Marx hated money because he was poor, and that's why you shouldn't listen to him. Like, this is so bad.
was central to his worldview. Once a person's subsistence, one's daily bread, was distributed on the basis of need rather than greed, man's natural communal affections, long suppressed by his capitalist overlords, would be renewed. This is Marx channeling the 18th century French social thinker Jean-Jacques Rousseau, one of the few people Marx admired.
Well, yeah, I guess that's technically true. He didn't admire all that many people. There are reasons for that. I'm not really going to get into them now. I just wanted to say really quickly, because I haven't seen a single wrench in the chat. Wait, was that one? No, that wasn't. Jay Pasick, you are now a moderator. So since you're like the person I've known the longest in the chat, so I needed another moderator since I haven't seen one in the chat thus far. And so yeah, you're lucky. You're the lucky pick.
According to Rousseau, this is
Don't fucking disappoint me, Jay.
what you must do if you want to create a new society. He who dares to undertake the making of a people's institutions must feel himself capable of changing human nature, of transforming each individual who by himself is a complete and solitary whole into part of a larger whole from which the individual receives his life and his being. Understand this, and you understand not only a key feature of Marxist thought, but the dark history of the 20th century. Marx.
Why are we painting it as this dark history? That's like halfway true, but he got it backwards, at least from Mark. That might be, was that the quote he gave from Jean-Jacques Rousseau or something, I think? So Marx would have said that, like, we don't need to change people to change societies. The change in societies will be driven by a desire for the people to want change. And changes in societies in which people can be afforded more liberty and more freedom to pursue their true goals and desires, obviously within reason, because you always have those people that want to take that way out of its context, then that would in and of itself result in a change of people. I'm glad to see Titan is here, the moderator on literally every YouTube channel ever.
Took Rousseau literally. Human nature had to be returned to its allegedly pure, selfless state before capitalism, with its enlightened.
No, it wasn't before capital. Oh my God. Marx made the same. Marx's criticisms could be applied to mercantilism, to hierarchical monarchism, to feudalism, to slave-based productive societies, going all the way back the last 6,000 or 8,000 years. It's a class society that Marx was criticizing, and he viewed capitalism, as I said earlier, as another medium through which the owners in this class society could maintain their ownership, their wealth, and thereby their power and control. It wasn't all of this roots in capitalism, which is the one bad thing that all of our woes come from. It was that capitalism is a medium utilized by those in control to maintain that control. I really don't think this guy actually understands Marxism.
And Judeo-Christian values corrupted him. But creating this new man would be a formidable task. Marx anticipated.
Let's hear that again, just because there's something interesting.
State before capitalism, with its enlightenment and Judeo-Christian values, corrupted him.
Notice what they're doing. They're associating the Enlightenment era, which came about largely during mercantilism and then later the rise of capitalism, and Judeo-Christian values with capitalism. They're painting capitalism as capitalism equals freedom and goodness and democracy, and Marxism equals bad, evil, death, and destruction. The framing that they're using here is very important, and you need to pay attention to it.
But creating this new man would be a formidable task.
Prager is well known for equating capitalism and the development of a more civilized society, the Enlightenment era, the development of science, and Judeo-Christian values developed by white Europeans together. I want to ask you guys, given that I'm assuming most of you understand, PragerU's politics and the audience that they're trying to appeal to, why is that the framework you think they would try to use?
Marx anticipated that many would object, especially the owners and managers that had a large stake in the capitalist system.
Yeah, well, no shit.
Friendly persuasion wasn't going to get the job done. Only the
True.
ruthless application of state power.
No, Marx was critical of the utilization of state power because he believed that state power was almost never utilized in favor of the proletariat. State power was almost always utilized to further the interests of the bourgeois, of the capitalist class. He was highly critical of the nation states and the power that they utilized because they almost always utilized that power to further the interests of the ownership class, who often through what would be nowadays known as regulatory capture, that's what the capitalists utilized to gain control over the nation states, to then utilize them as arms to further their interests. This is how I know that either A, he's ignorant, Brad doesn't know anything. Dr. Thompson, he's a legitimate professional, I'll call him that. Dr. Thompson either A, is ignorant of Marxism, or B, he's just intellectually dishonest, whereby he understands that he's misrepresenting Marxism, but is doing it because he's on PragerU.
Would be up to the task. Marx was all for it. Private property, wage labor, competition in profits, these would have to go.
There's a lot
Property,
of nuance
wage labor,
here.
competition in profits.
So wage labor and profits are something that he thought should disappear. Private property, in a sense, Marx thought should disappear. Private property, yes. Personal property, no. And there was a distinction between personal property, which is ultimately a subset of private property, and then broadly private. Like, think about it. Think about the local super Walmart in your town or the next town over if you live in a rural area like I do. Even though it's not a super Walmart, it's a regular Walmart. That tells you how rural we are. That is private property. That Walmart, the store, the parking lot, all of it is private property. But which individual owns it? Well, it's not owned by an individual. So it's private property, but it's not personal property. See, Marx would not have agreed with the abolition of personal property, which is a subset of private property. He believed in the abolishment of broader private property and that it was just unnecessary to the development of human society.
These would have to go. The state, now run by the workers themselves, the dictatorship of the proletariat is Marx.
That's not what, anyway. No. Marx didn't think, no. Marx didn't prescribe, again, this is like the third time I've had to say it. Marx and Engels did not prescribe a praxis, a way of bringing this to fruition in the world. They did not do that. And anybody who thinks they did hasn't read anything about them. So to say that Marx wanted, he was all in favor of utilizing state power, absolutely not. I am an orthodox Marxist. I don't consider Leninism to be really a form of Marxism. I consider it to be a bastardization of it, but that's a different discussion. But no, I am not a Leninist Marxist. There are many that I do actually get along with, but then there are others that I would not get along with, like Infrared Haas. But Marx would not have agreed that workers should utilize state power to overcome the capitalist class. He would have said that workers probably wouldn't have been able to because the state power is largely going to work in favor of the capitalist class who holds the wealth that can be used to gain power over the state. But he also would have said that the state is a hierarchical system and we should reduce that. Like, utilizing hierarchical systems to combat hierarchical systems is unideal to a Marxist. Or at least I should say an orthodox Marxist like myself.
Marx called it, would control production and pricing. It would wisely manage.
I mean, sure, but I don't think there's going to be much at all that me and Angstreich would disagree with. I've heard a few of his debates and discussions. I don't really hear anything that he says that I disagree with. And exactly, he's an absolute nut. He is an absolute nut.
Manage the economy, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. And imagine how wonderful it would be. No more ego, no more self-interest. Instead, everybody working for the benefit of everybody else. Peace, love, and harmony. For many, it's a very simple.
I thought he was criticizing Marxism, not utopian socialism, which has been around since before Marxism. What are you talking about here, Dr. Thompson?
Productive idea. Who wouldn't aspire to live in such a world? Look around, a Marxist might say. The powerful exploit the weak, crushing the majority's noble aspirations, your aspirations, just so they can have more.
I mean, unironically, yes, but there's some nuance there.
It's unfair and unjust. How much better if we just start over, start clean? That's the Marxist socialist dream.
Well, Marxism broadly, socialism is Marxist, but Marxism doesn't intrinsically contain the notion of socialism. Socialism and communism were states of human society that Marx saw as inevitable under his analysis of political economy, or critique of it, critique and analysis, I should say.
In real life, it's a nightmare. Needs become demands.
This just reminds me of the I might be getting the TV show wrong. I think it might be like The Simpsons, but I think it was Futurama. They were running an episode and they were talking about it was either socialism or communism. I think it was socialism. But every time they said the word socialism, they said it like this: socialism. And that I almost feel like that's how these people should say it, like to make it like sound more evil and dark and stuff. And I think that when people hear the term socialism, that's what they're hearing. They're not hearing socialism. They're hearing socialism. Ooh. Yeah, and the word socialism existed prior to Marx. You are correct there, David.
And demands become rights. The best are mocked and the worst exalted. Innovation withers while the government grows ever larger.
What? No! The government is a hierarchical system. Marx criticized hierarchical systems. What are you talking about?
Eventually, the productive become virtual slaves to the unproductive, and the society collapses.
Well, yeah, the productive are the ones that work, and the unproductive are the ones that own. But that's just capitalism. What?
Economically, intellectually, and morally.
Yes, under a capitalist mode of production where there is an ownership class and a laborer class from which the ownership class extracts wealth and value, then yes, there are revolutions that can oftentimes result in certain collapses of, at least in some sense, of society. Yeah, but you're just describing the Marxism accurately here, where you think you're criticizing it. Oh, wow.
And then the real horror starts. If you think I'm exaggerating, just ask someone who fled the Soviet Union or Cuba or Venezuela.
Yeah, whether or not those countries could be considered socialist, communist, Marxist, whatever word you want to use, this is just a tangential discussion.
For all its risk and inequities, they prefer freedom. And we should too.
Seems like you're saying that freedom is antithetical to Marxism, which would just be an admission of your ignorance of Marxism.
I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University for Prager University.
Which isn't
engraved on Karl Marx's tombstone in Highgate Cemetery in North London are the following words. The philosophers have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.
Yes. Based as fuck. Absolutely based.
Substitute the word professor for the word philosopher. We really don't have philosophers anymore, and you...
Well, I mean, we do. Like, what do you mean when you say we don't have what? What? Graham Oppie is a philosopher. What are you talking about? William Lane Craig is a philosopher. What are you talking about? Oh my
get right to the core of Marx's enduring attraction to the contemporary world. Marx demands that the intellectual class...
Brad Thompson, he's a Clemson University, is I believe what he said.
The professors of law, sociology, history, women's studies, anthropology, journalism, and so on come out of the ivory tower and join the barricades. to see the
See, now what he's doing is he's painting this picture that all academics are just up in their ivory towers. They don't really know anything at all now, see. They're just a bunch of elitist academics thinking they're so much better than everybody else, being indoctrinated into all this evil leftist Democrat Marxism, socialism, communism bullshit. This is just conspiracism at this point.
themselves not as the preservers of the dusty past, but the creators of a new and glorious future. The lure has proven to be very strong, and it's not hard to understand why. How much more meaningful, exciting, and romantic to see yourself as an agent of change rather than a mere academic. How much more meaningful, exciting, and romantic to see the young people who fill up your classroom as potential soldiers in the cause.
That's a good one, Dave.
Send them into the world with the
I like
same
that.
revolutionary spirit, the same disgust toward bourgeois middle-class values that you feel, and you've done.
I'm sorry. Look, if you understood what Marx meant by bourgeois economics or anything like that, you would understand the vast majority of people probably aren't going to agree with a lot of it.
Your job. And we must give these lecture hall revolutionaries their due. Look around. For the most part, they've succeeded. Drill into any current leftist movement, environmentalism, critical race theory, the massive expansion of the welfare state, not to mention diversity, equity, and inclusion offices at every university and major corporation, and you will find Marxism at its core.
Wait, isn't that just to say that Marxism believed in a greater sense of unity, freedom, liberty, diversity, multiculturalism, and all the other things that have been demonstrably shown to be positives for society? Like, this isn't an argument against Marxism. You're literally saying, yeah, all these super good things that are totally based and we should kind of try to implement in society have their roots in Marxism. That's just saying that, like, Marxism is super based and maybe we should look into it further. Like, this isn't even a criticism. What's going on?
A contempt of the Enlightenment and the Judeo-Christian value system from which
I love how they keep doing this. They're associating Marxism as being against the Enlightenment and against Judeo-Christian values, which I'll admit there might be a place for that, but that would really have to be hashed out. That would be a discussion in and of itself, I think.
capitalism springs.
I love it. Capitalism spring. Wait, hold on. Did he say from which capitalism springs?
We'll find a Judeo-Christian value system from which capitalism springs.
Wait. You think capitalism is a result of the Enlightenment and Judeo-Christian values? Remember what I said earlier about the way that they'll frame it. Remember why they're framing it that way.
Marx's most famous call to action, workers of the world unite, was not, of course, to the professoriate, but to the laboring class.
No shit.
That didn't work out so well.
Why not? There was I'm sorry, but like in the late 1800s all the way into the 1920s and 30s, there was a massive global movement across a variety of nations to try to implement Marxism and socialism. I think most of them failed, and I don't think that bears on Marxism because, again, Marxism doesn't tell you how to do that. That's left for the individual to decide. And I think that individuals can make bad decisions with respect to that. But what it failed, okay.
Workers, especially in the United States, turned out to be more interested in refrigerators than revolutions.
Yeah, Marx would say that was a result of capitalism and a result of this notion of the fetishism of commodification. Is that what it was? Whereby they sought to advertise and push people to consume.
The only barricade they were passionate about was a white picket fence in front of a green suburban lawn. Poor, benighted souls, the appeal of Marxism was somehow lost on them.
Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder if that has to do with anything about the current political economic system trying to do everything it can to protect and protect itself and persist.
Maybe because they didn't go to college. But the intellectual class never lost faith. Even after Stalin, even after Mao, even after Castro wrecked Cuba, even after Pol Pot.
Yeah, well, wrecked Cuba is a very subjective term. I think Castro was largely authoritarian, but I don't think that it can be denied that out of his particular regime, there were actually positive things that came. Now, the problem is people will say that because there might have been like one or two positive things that came out of something that's largely negative, that thereby you're saying the whole thing was positive. Well, no. Their education system and their healthcare system are objectively rated as some of the best in the world.
Murdered.
And that did not start until Castro got there. I'm not saying I agree with him or that I think that largely he did a good job, but there's nuance and you've got to give credit where credit is due. I don't care what you believe or what you agree or disagree with, you've got to do it.
Millions of his fellow Cambodians, even after Hugo Chavez destroyed the strongest economy in South America. The academic elite.
That one's also, again, that's kind of like a Castro thing there, honestly. So, yeah, it's just bad framing on their part.
Remained true believers.
Yeah, maybe it's because what they believed in was like Marxism as Marx laid it out and not all these bastardized versions of it that a bunch of people thought that they were going to be able to do and ultimately failed at doing.
In a world without faith, where God is dead, Marxism has become, in effect, a substitute.
I know, I literally know Catholics and some other religious people who are Marx. Oh, like Marx was not a fan of religion, and Marxism is often given as not necessarily atheistic, but it's secular. And those do not mean the same thing. But you don't have to be an atheist to be a Marxist. That is not, no.
Religion.
Marxism is
one of the major strengths.
Well, actually, I should say for some people, Marxism kind of is a religion. I'm just glad I'm not one of those people.
Of Marxism, in contrast to both modern liberalism and conservatism, is the unyielding commitment of its followers to this faith, to bear witness to it, and to act on it. It summons these followers to join a crusade to destroy the evil that is capitalism and to create the good that is communism. In our secular world, the Marxist ideal gives the Marxist true believer a reason to live, a reason to die, and a reason to kill. Monsters like Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Kim Il-sung, Ho Chi Minh, and Pol Pot.
I love how he said Kim Il-sung. Kim Il-sung? And then he said Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh? God, white people, man.
Took this to the nth degree and murdered millions.
Yeah. I've already explained this like 3 times, at least 2.
For the record, the latter 2 were politically educated in France. Pol Pot studied at the Sorbonne. If you think I'm exaggerating the evils of
okay. Okay. Sure.
Marxism. If you think Stalin and those other guys got communism wrong, but your new democratic socialism will get it right, think again.
Okay, see, this is the thing. What the fuck is democratic socialism? Socialism is democratic. I don't know what that word, I don't know what the phrase democratic socialism means. I'm sorry, I don't.
Marxism leads a society toward a fixed goal, a utopian vision.
No, Marxism doesn't lay out goals for societies. It's a socio-political analysis of well, at least at the time and even into the modern age of the current contemporary political economy. And Marx and Engels both were highly critical of utopians.
Vision of pure freedom in which the individual is liberated from the false consciousness of capitalism. Unfortunately, by Marx's own definition, the path to this utopia requires the destruction, economically, politically, and morally, of every vestige of civilization as we know it.
No.
Economically, Marxism seeks to destroy free enterprise.
Actually, no, he just wants enterprise to truly be free and democratic.
The division of labor.
Yeah, well, of course he wants to get rid of the division of labor. Why should there be an ownership class and a laborer class? Why are you acting like that's a good thing? In virtue of what is that a good thing?
Profit and loss, competition.
Profit and loss? Yeah, why do we need to profit off of things? Why do we need a commodified economy? Also, competition? Well, what do you mean by that, first off?
And material wealth.
What do you mean by material wealth?
Politically, it seeks to destroy the rule of law.
No, it doesn't.
Separation of
No, it doesn't.
powers and freedom of speech.
No, it doesn't. Just show me where in any of Marx's writings he says this, with quotations and citations and everything. Just show me that, and then I will happily rescind the statement that you're fucking dumb and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Morally, it seeks to destroy individualism, religious liberty, and independent thought.
No.
And on top of this rubble, it builds the all-powerful state ruled by an all...
Yes, Marx sought to expand state power, a hierarchical system that he totally wasn't at all critical of, particularly not in the first volume of Capital.
Powerful elite. This is why the communist 1%, the true 1%, must use the full power of the state to force the 99%, the true 99%, to become something they are.
They're just calling the capitalist 1% communists here. Like, what are you doing? Oh, shit.
Are not and do not want to be. And if that doesn't work, the secular philosophy of brotherly love simply intimidates into silence and ultimately liquidates as much of the 99% as is necessary to keep everybody in line.
Yeah, you're just describing. This is
Censorship, secret police, and re-education camps. These are not bugs in an imperfect system. They are features, critical parts of its design.
Yes, they are critical parts of the current political economic design of the world. Yes. Yes, Dr. Thompson. Yes. And Marxism criticizes that. Absolutely.
In short, the problem with Marxism has been and always will be Marxism.
That... What the fuck does that mean? What? Guys, the problem with rape is that it's rape. The problem with murder is and always has been murder. What is this saying? I don't understand what's being said. Oh my God.
Too bad the academic establishment has yet to figure this out.
Establishment, there actually is an academic establishment, and I am quite critical of it.
Or even worse, maybe they have. I'm Brad Thompson, professor of political science at Clemson University for Prager University.
Wow. All right. That was that was some good prep for my debate with T-Jump tomorrow, which is on the same subject, Marxism, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow, modern day debate, you should be there. If T-Jump was smart, he'd have been watching the stream, though I doubt it. Not because I think he's dumb, but he's probably fucking busy. I think he's got his own stream going right now, actually. I don't agree with him on everything. For the most part, I don't have a problem with T-Jump. I think we'll have a pretty good discussion, even if we disagree. Well, obviously, we're already going to disagree. That's the whole point of a debate. But, yeah, this... I'm not really going to do much of a cap on this like I do, because, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. T-Jump, David. I'm going to be debating T-Jump. I don't know if you've heard of him, but the topic is Marxism on Trial. It's tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Modern Day Debate. But yeah, this was an interesting video. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious PragerU just doesn't either A, doesn't understand Marxism, or B, understands it and is just doing everything in their power to misrepresent it. But I actually enjoyed this one. This was a lot of fun. It went a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I wasn't expecting to hear so much dumb shit, I guess. Anyway, I'm gonna get out of here, guys. You guys go have fun with your families. Get out of here. What are you still doing? Stop watching. The number's at 8. It should be at 4. Go. It's a Friday. Get out of here. Get gone. Go. Disappear.